Let's be honest, we've all seen the critical comments people have been making about Elementor in the last 1 or 2 years. People are saying that other page builders are way faster with releasing features, and Gutenberg is also on the rise. But constantly switching to another page builder when there are a few more features here is also not a good idea, because then you have to change your whole workflow, but just burying your head in the sand also isn't a good idea, because we should be critical sometimes of the tools we're actually using. So to get a better understanding of how Elementor sees these issues, I thought, why not ask Elementor themselves? Because this summer I met the CPO, the Chief Product Officer of Elementor at WordCamp US, and I asked him if he wanted to do an interview with me. And since Elementor is trying to be more transparent with the community, he told me, he thought that this was a good idea as well. So now I'm gonna hop in the Zoom call and ask him some critical questions about the future, the progress and the competition. Amitai is the CPO of Elementor, which means that he is the man in charge of making the big decisions about the product. Hi Amitai, welcome to the show, and it's awesome that you are here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rino. It's awesome to be here.
Well, thank you for doing this interview as well. Okay, let's start the conversation. Let me first start off by saying that I really love Elementor. It has actually changed my life. I mean, before Elementor, I was not able to actually convert my designs from back then Adobe XD and now Figma to an actual website, but now I can just deliver the whole package to a client. So I'm just really happy with Elementor. But I'm gonna be a little bit critical here as well.
Of course, yeah, and it's awesome. It's great. It's great to be here, and you know, we love your channel, right? Like I watched many of the videos, and you know, we take a lot of the feedback that you know, we get through your channel, through your users and their comments very seriously. And yeah, I'll be happy to answer some of the questions. And so I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here and to talk to you.
All right.
So thanks.
Yeah, you too. Okay, let's start with the first point that I'm making, and Elementor is the biggest and best by far, in my opinion. But as time moved on, more players entered the market, and now some people are starting to look at other page builders a little bit more. I think that this has a lot to do with Elementor's focus, or more specifically, the lack of certain features. Because for quite some time, Elementor didn't release a lot of features that were considered core, but more on the fancy side. Do you also think that this is the reason why essential features like the container took so long? And doesn't this make you guys worried a little bit about the competition when this progress is maybe not so fast as you wanted?
It's a really good question. I think that when you experience the sort of growth that we're experiencing in Elementor in terms of the user base and the scale, you know, you have to deal with a multitude of challenges, and I think what you're asking relates to two of those challenges that we had to contend with. The first one is how do you cater your product to just a huge variety of different user types. Right? Like when you start up, you have your core users, you just build the features and everything's great, but as you grow, all of a sudden you get many more different types of users using your products, right? Like it can be beginners and advanced, it can be designers, marketing persons, and then you kind of find yourself in this place where you try to design a feature and you try to make it work for everybody because there's just so many different types of users that are actually using the product. So that's the first challenge. And the second one has to do with the fact that when you become a platform and you get more products building on top of your product, it sometimes makes changing the core much more challenging than just a product that, just a regular product, because those products are actually using your code in ways that you can't really anticipate. Now this is awesome, right? It's great to become the platform, but it makes the development of certain features, specifically core features that in many instances happen to be the most requested features, much more challenging. And when we had to figure out ways how we can address those challenges, it required us to first kind of really understand who the user is and how we can cater to those different types of users. And I think we have a really good understanding now of how we can do that. And the second one is to really put in the time and the effort to make sure that your infrastructure can support those changes to the core without kind of breaking the entire ecosystem whenever you make a change. And those core features were more challenging, but we figured that one out as well. We put in a lot of time, and that's, I think, the slowness that you're referring to has to do with the work that we've done on the infrastructure. But now that we've done that, we can finally move much faster, and I think you can see that with the last two releases, that we really start to build momentum in terms of the velocity, and you start getting those features that everybody has been asking for. But I think those are the challenges that are sometimes more difficult to see from the outside, and you have to put in the time and effort to make sure that you can address those.
Okay, well, that's very interesting to hear because, from the outside, as a user who just uses the platform, you only see the product releases and then you don't really see that there's also challenges that a company like that has to deal with challenges. But let's just be a little bit more specific because you're talking about infrastructure. What does this mean? Is this like support? Because I think with more users comes more support, or is it how you run the company or how you do, I don't know, product updates? Like, what is that infrastructure?
Oh, so it's actually true what you're saying. When you say infrastructure, we had to do a lot of work on our support infrastructure and our company and the way you structure the teams. But what I mean is the actual product code, right? Because when you build a product, you don't actually always think about how that product code is going to be used by others. So you just build the product and you just keep adding features. Once you start to be more like a platform, you have to think about the architecture of the code differently. It needs to be more modular. You need to make sure that when you change something in the core, it doesn't necessarily impact the APIs or the contract that you have with the add-ons or the other products that are using the code. You have to manage those changes, right? Let's say you do have to change something. We want to make sure that we communicate those changes so that our partners can react to those changes and make the updates that are necessary on their end in a timely manner. And because we operate in an open source kind of environment, it adds to the challenge because you can't really enforce those changes. You can't really, it's open. That's the great thing about open source, right? Like everybody can do anything. So you have to structure your code in a way that you can make those changes without impacting the users. And those are not necessarily things that you think about early on when you just kind of keep adding features to the product. But at a certain scale, a certain size, with so many users, so many websites, so many different versions, so many plugins and add-ons, you have to start thinking about those things because you get to a place where you start every little change that you make to the code just creates problems and issues and compatibility problems. So you have to take the time and just sometimes do a complete re-architecture of the code base in certain areas. But once you do that, you pay the price of not being able to ship features really fast. Once you make those changes, you can start building back momentum. And this is kind of where we're at right now, which is it's awesome. It's nice, after this fairly long time, which we kind of feel like slow, and you get all those comments and you get the feature requests, but you have to do the work. And now you start kind of reaping the rewards, and we can start kind of shipping those features really fast. And this is awesome. It's an awesome feeling.
Okay, so that's really cool to hear, like that progression. And can you answer this one shortly? Hopefully, has this a lot to do with the container? Because has the container been impacted by this story?
Yeah, the container is the perfect example for kind of like this core change that you make to the product that it can have like huge implications about everything you do. On the other hand, you really want to build that feature because it's the basis for so many features that are coming now, right? Like, the nested tabs that we have released, right? Like in a bunch of, the loop builder, like everything is building on top of the container. But to make that change, moving from section and columns to the container is a huge change. Just think of the number of plugins that are using section and columns. They're using the classes in the code, in the HTML, right? Like you have to account for all those changes. And this is the reason why we're making that change so gradually, right? Like you kind of really want to make sure that you get it right. We had to actually build ways to deploy the code in a way that when we ship code, it doesn't necessarily activate on all the millions of websites that are being powered by Elementor. This is why we introduced the experiments, right? So you can just kind of open that functionality when you think it is safe, and then we kind of promote that to a place where it only runs on new websites and not existing websites. So these are all tools that we kind of had to build ourselves and kind of really reinvent the processes for making those core changes without creating a lot of damage to our users and customers.
Okay, so is it fair to say that Elementor then wasn't really prepared for the responsibility that comes with an open source plugin, and maybe started, really enthusiastic, and but now like the company has learned like, oh, there's actually a lot that goes into building a product like this, and maybe that's also the reason, that's my interpretation, that other plugins that don't have this open source structure can therefore move a lot faster. Do you agree with any of this?
I think there's a bunch of questions in that question, so I'll try to kind of break it and reply kind of separately. I think that when you build a product, it's difficult to anticipate success as big as Elementor has, and anticipate that scale of growth. It was crazy, and still, but now that we have the infrastructure, you don't feel that as much. But if you go back, like months or in the last few years, you could see that in other areas of the company, right? The Elementor support, when the momentum started exploding, we just wasn't able to keep up with the number of customers that we needed to support. Mm-hmm. And we had to do a lot of changes and iterate and adjustments, and we tried different structures and different layouts of the organization. We brought different tools, to be able to handle that challenge. But we were successful there, right? And now if you look at the support, you see that the response times are super quick. The CSAT is really high, and we're building very positive sentiment when it comes to support. And we intend to keep on improving that, and we have a lot of new ideas, and we keep working on that service. But again, it was very difficult to anticipate early on. And that the same applies to the product, right? Like you build a product, we built a page builder, and then it expands a little bit. But and then we created the API so that other add-ons can build on top of that product. And again, that grew up really fast. And again, there's some things that you only figure out later. I think this is part of the experience. But and the last, what you asked about, being open. I think that, yes, of course, I think that closed source products don't necessarily experience the same challenges that we experience. But I wouldn't for a minute. I think I wouldn't for a minute trade places. I think this is okay. Being open and kind of fostering that innovation and having all those products building on top of Elementor is a huge contributor to our growth. And I think it's we can't cover everything. And you see the things that partners and other products that are adding to Elementor, the functionality that is being added and the things that we can cover is amazing. I think this is the beauty and the magic of open source. And yes, of course, it provides for certain challenges. Yeah. But I think this is absolutely what we believe in. I think this is the right way. We have no regrets. And
okay. I think I'm comparing it in my mind with how Google and Apple operates. Like Apple is more a closed system. Of course, they also have APIs in the App Store. But Google is more like open source. Everybody can build everything that they want. And therefore, new products are added faster. But at the same time, this also is a challenge. And it's not always that one company is better than the other. It's just a different approach. And I think if I can say like this is actually also what WordPress is, and yes, of course, WordPress itself is also trying to create Gutenberg, and which will maybe become more closed. I don't know, but I think this is also the beauty, the blessing and the curse of WordPress, because there's so much possible, but that also sometimes create some problems. But it's great to hear that you guys have now been preparing and learned from all of that, and now it seems like from your story, much more prepared for the future, and also working with add-ons, because one of the questions that I got in my Facebook group was from Crocoblock itself, and they said, I wonder what their strategy is working and collaborating with Elementor add-ons. Because when you guys introduced the loop builder, I thought like, okay, well, maybe they're also gonna build a custom post type feature and custom fields. Like, why not integrate all of that? So let's just focus on that question. What is the strategy with working with those add-ons? Are you guys really gonna build a lot of more features to kind of make a more seamless experience, or is it always gonna be like this? Like, what is the vision?
Yeah. So First of all, we try to work as closely as we can with our partners, with our add-ons. Going back to kind of like the responsibility of being a platform and making changes to the core and risking breaking those APIs. We try to communicate that as best as we can and in advance, and we will be improving that. We're actually putting together now a dedicated team that will be kind of responsible for managing those relationships and making sure that the communication is flawless and that everything is more stable. In terms of the product strategy, the way we look at it is that we try to create the best core. So everything that we deem as core, and sometimes it's a fine line. And Loop Builder initially, there was a lot of other products that were providing that sort of functionality, but we got so many requests and so much kind of pull from our users that we need to make that part of our core, that we ended up making that decision and making the Loop Builder part of our core, and we tried to make it as integrated as possible and as clean and really kind of part of the containers and everything so that it is a core feature. But in terms of the strategy, we want to invest at the core, and we want to allow the ecosystem and our partners to keep adding things and products that we sometimes can't even imagine or think about. I think this is where open source kind of encourages creativity and innovation. So yes, our goal is definitely to help our partners succeed. There's a ton of pleasure watching, a partner succeed by doing your product. And obviously when our partners succeed and there's more add-ons, it's good for Elementor, it's good for our users. And our focus is really to try to make the core as best, as solid as possible, so that we can open more APIs and add more functionality so that more products can be built on top of Elementor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now I'm just thinking of a new question. Like, don't you have a problem then with these plugins having the same functionality? Because then there is some competition, right? For example, with the theme builder or a loop builder, like they can both promote the same thing. How do you see that? Because an add-on should be an add-on. It should not be a replacement.
So I think this is the going back to the beauty of an open platform and open source. You have kind of like, it's like a free market, right? Like you have the open, you have the ability to write anything you want. And if a partner comes and you build a product and is better than possibly what we're offering at that point in time and gives more values to our users, this is great. I think the main thing is that we figure out how we can work together. And I think this goes back to transparency. The more transparent that we can be, the more that we can tell our partners our plans. This is where we're going to be focusing on in the coming future. This is important for us. And there's an open communication flow that goes between us and the add-ons. And I think we will also be working on improving that communication, because that transparency is the key to making sure that we can just keep adding more value to the user and not kind of just get our kind of everything crossed.
I see. Okay, so more transparency is the focus from here on. And I actually got a question from the community, which is in the sphere of transparency. And it's from Jan, and he said, why don't you have a public roadmap?
I think we will. I think that we will have a public roadmap. I think in the last few years, when we were really heads down working on making sure that we can actually build that momentum, build the velocity, and making sure that we can deliver what we want to ship, fast and at a high quality. And as you can see, we've had instances in the past when I myself personally said, "Oh, we got this feature coming up, really soon," and it took us about a year and a half to ship that feature. So I think we wanted to kind of build that confidence that we're really at a place where we can plan and we can ship, and we can do that in the standard that we wanted to ship those features. And we got to that place now. We're building that momentum, and I think the next phase will be, in fact, to start opening more of our roadmap, make it more public so that everybody can see that. Going back to the conversation we had about our partners, so that our partners can see that, I think in general it would be much better to everybody, so that know where we're heading. And I think we're at a place that we're just about ready to do so. So you can expect that in the near future.
Oh, that's really cool to hear, because I really love that from some other plugins that I've seen, because then you know, like, okay, you don't have to worry if it's coming. You just know that it's coming, and it doesn't even have to have a date. I mean, we all understand like some things get delayed, and but just knowing that it's on the horizon or it's in progress, that like that is super super cool. So I'm really happy that that's gonna be here. Yeah. Okay, and then I want to talk about the thing you said in the beginning of this talk, and that is about the audience that Elementor is serving. And you said that it was a challenge because different users have different needs, and that's a point that I wanted to touch on, because I feel like Elementor is trying to serve many audiences, and this also maybe creates some problems. It's just my view, because at one side you guys are trying to market to beginners with marketing like it's easy to use, you don't have to know code, but at the same time you're adding more and more features for pros to work more globally, and the tools has quite some few coding references. So does Elementor want to go into the direction of Webflow and bricks that almost expects their users to understand the basics of code, or does Elementor want to become more like Wix and Squarespace? I know these are extremes and maybe it's somewhere in the middle, but from my perspective, Elementor has already advanced so much that it's more leaning towards a professional tool than it is a super no-code Wix Squarespace tool. So how do you see that?
This is one of the biggest questions that we've had internally, right, and inside the product, and talking about who is that user, because that's a super relevant question. And I think that initially, one of the factors contributing to Elementor's success is just being able to kind of walk that fine line and being able to kind of provide professional features to users, and enable users that maybe have access now to features or capabilities that were not available to them before they started using Elementor. But again, as we expanded the user base, we've got some really high-end professional users using Elementor, as well as beginners. And we get more and more of those on our cloud platform, where you get like users that are just you get one click, you get your website, and you can start building. All of a sudden, you get that really high-end professional tool, which is really challenging. So we had a lot of internal discussions, and I think this is, again, I said that was one of the key challenges in the past couple of years, to really understand how we can address that issue. And to answer your questions, yes, we will be serving multiple audiences. I think the refinement that we did from a product perspective is to understand that this is a professional product, this is a product for professionals, but every professional started out as a beginner. And we need to make sure that we provide those professional features, that we give that functionality, and you also can see that in the latest releases. Now that we got that kind of feature train going, you can see some really advanced features in there. But we also have to allocate resources to make sure that we can bring those more of beginner users to that professional level. And this is different. It's a bit nuanced, but if you think about it, it's not a product for beginners, right? It's a product for beginners to become professionals. And I think that took us a while to kind of, hone in on that nuanced approach. But once we did, we were able to start kind of finalizing those features, figuring out the best product design, and kind of get on that train.
Okay, so you don't think that trying to serve two audiences sometimes can also slow down the progress? Because that's what I'm thinking, because what kind of communication do you use? Because, for example, like let's have the example of Webflow. They just say on their website something like development, but then visual. So it starts with development, but within Elementor, it starts in a visual way, right? There are a lot of templates, and I know these other tools also have templates, but it's hard to communicate to two audiences. And don't you think that can also slow down progress? Because you have to, at some point, you have to make a decision, like, how is this feature gonna work? For example, with the loop builder or the container, like, what terms do you use, right? Do beginners actually know what this development term means? And how do you navigate that? Isn't that making it a bit harder?
Oh, absolutely. It making it way harder. But I think the great products, if you look at great products of the past and of today, those are products that were able to figure that thing out. And there are many examples of those, right? And professional products and you got suites of products that are able to offer super high-end functionality, but they have a huge user base. And that user can select whether you want to just use some basic features. Like I know, I'm fairly old, right? And I remember Photoshop, there are many users that are using Photoshop in a very simple and basic fashion. But you can do, great things with Photoshop, and you can, there are many more modern and kind of current product that are the same. That you can use them at a very basic functionality. You can use, templates. You can, shift some layouts around, but you can also get into like as high as you want in terms of functionality and complexity. And yes, it's absolutely not a simple thing to do. It absolutely is a challenge. But now that we figured out kind of like the attack vector, we can answer a lot of the questions that were really challenging for us to answer from a product design perspective. And I'm optimistic that we will be able to figure this out. I think that was the core of Elementor, was that, right? Like you can give superpowers to users and give them a lot of functionality that was not available before. And I think we just need to apply that same ideal on a much larger user base. We don't always get it right the first time around, and not always in the second time around, but we keep iterating and we succeed in those challenges. And there's already some examples that you can see how we tackle a specific challenge, looks impossible, we make it work, and we just move on from one challenge to the next one. And I think what you present is it is a challenge, but we look forward to succeeding in that as well.
Okay, well, I think that's beautiful, because I think that, with many companies that become too big, they tend to sometimes become too cocky, and then they lose the grip on the market. I think, for example, what happened with Nokia, or with companies that don't want to innovate, and then they die because they think they are the biggest. And I think that's always a threat. So it's beautiful to see that there's a lot of self-awareness in the learning process here. So that just makes me confident about the future. I want to end this by thanking you for the answers. I think it's super important to shine some light on what's happening in the background, because I think a lot of people were a bit worried. So for me, at least, this was really nice, and I really want to thank you. And I want to give you the opportunity to end with something else you want to add, maybe. If not, then it's also okay.
No, for sure. So first of all, thank you for that interview. It's a great opportunity to communicate more, with our community and our users. I think that again, sometimes it's not apparent from the outside, but we listen all the time to the community. We review every GitHub request, every feature request, every issue. We are in all the Facebook groups. We read the comments that people are putting on your videos. We listen to you. We listen to many other people that talk about Elementor. We have a lot of attention, and we collect all that feedback and we try to address that. And you see that sometimes we're more successful, and I think that now we'll be able to do more of that. And again, this is great. It's been a wild ride in the last few years here in Elementor. We got more than 12 million websites. It's growing fast. It's incredible, and I think we're at a very positive place right now. So I'm looking forward to this coming year. I think there's a lot of really awesome plans, a lot of cool features that are already in the works. Like we said, hopefully we'll be able to share that public roadmap very soon. And I'm excited to see, what users are thinking about those next few releases. It's gonna be great.
Okay.
So thank you, Rino.
Well, thank you as well. It's awesome that you guys want to do this and just talk to the community. So yeah, I want to end it here, and I'm very excited for what's coming. All right, bye. Okay, guys, I have tackled most of the points that I wanted. And I think the most important thing to learn here for us is that this company, Elementor, is open source and other plugins can build on top of it. And that just makes the progress a lot harder. So I think how you should look at Elementor is not just as a page builder plugin, as he said, but more like a platform. It's not just Elementor. You also get the opportunity to to add things like CrocoBlock on top of it, which as you guys know, I'm a big fan of. But not only CrocoBlock, all the other add-ons. And this just makes it harder. And the second thing that is important is about the audiences that they're trying to serve. I'm not really sure if I fully agree if that's a good idea to focus on many different audiences. But I also do agree that there are some products in the market that are for beginners and for pros. But I'm just not really sure if that is enough in this WordPress market because there is so much competition. But only the future can tell. I don't run this company. I'm just a dude making videos. So what do I know? Of course I have my thoughts and I share them with you. And of course it's also good to keep our eyes open for what's happening in the market. So if there are really some things that you want to say to Elementor, put them in the comments below because they might just read the comments as he said, which is great to hear in general. The roadmap, everything. I think the future looks pretty bright for Elementor, but again, we'll see. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you want more videos about how to start your own web design business, then check out Living with Pixels below. And then I want to thank you for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next video.